Welcome to Functional Therapy's Movement Library. We'd like to share with you a spine traction series. So often in our adult life, we spend so much time in a seated position, which overly compresses our connective tissue. It behooves us then to apply traction intermittently throughout the day. Here's a simple way you can perform this. We're going to use a dowel rod as an assisted device. However, you can do this without a dowel rod. I'm going to have Brandy demonstrate a multi-dimensional or three-dimensional spine traction series. We're going to start from the side so that you can get a clear understanding of how the spine is actually going to move. Brandy's going to first start the traction by putting her arms up overhead as high as she possibly can reach. The key to this is straightening the elbows and getting the hands to reach as high as possible. That applies a nice long axis traction. Once she's positioned, we're going to have her drive in an anterior direction via the spine motion of cervical flexion, so her head first, then thoracic, then lumbar. Think of the 24 vertebrae like dominoes, and you're going to curl them from the top, center to the bottom. You can keep a slight bend in your hip if that feels comfortable, a slight bend in your knee if that feels comfortable. We don't want to lock the knee out, but we also don't want to flex it too much. Slight flexion enables us to have stability all the way through the spine via the tension of the posterior soft tissue complex of the lower leg and upper leg. So here she performs the flexion all the way down, which puts a huge traction across the lower back. And then she goes up, but before she goes backwards, the key is to lift up to the ceiling first, getting that vertical displacement, and then posterior migration. That's really the key, is every time you go through this arcing motion, you're thinking about elongating your fingertips from your toes. Now we'll move in the lateral direction. So she's going to face us. In this position, she reaches up higher, and you can always assess how high can I reach now that I've performed anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe 8 to 10. The amount of repetitions really is dependent on each person. So in this lateral plane now, think of yourself up against a wall or a windshield wiper. You're going to move side to side with the traction. So the higher you lift, the better. And you'll note with Brandy here, she's moving throughout the entire kinetic chain. That is the key. We don't want the spine to flex on its own, extend on its own, laterally bend on its own. Instead, what we're looking for is a smooth, coordinated action throughout the whole system. The dowel rod, hands connected, help us to drive the spine from the top down because the bottom part of the body is fixed into the ground. Now I'm going to have Brandy go through the rotation pattern. So now she's going to go through rotation. Same rules apply. Traction as high as possible. Always think that your fingertips are as far away from your toes as possible, or someone's pulling you up to the ceiling. What's interesting about this three-dimensional traction mobilization is you can start to identify where your body's stiff relative to the opposite side. That would be the side that you need to concentrate on. Once you've gone through this three-dimensional sequence, you can repeat it once again to the flexion, extension, or what we could call anterior-posterior plane, then migrate to the lateral plane, then the rotational plane. This can be performed intermittently throughout the day, and it offsets that dreaded prolonged seated position.